Hello, this is a Substance Painter Basics overview. So I'm going to talk through just basic layers, stacking, masks, and some normals. So because I don't really feel like importing any of my models, I'm gonna go with stack painting. That's going to bring you a little model from Substance. So uh, I think you may be already familiar with the layout and Substance, but I will talk you through it anyway. So on your left, you've got your classic toolbar with all the options like paint, eraser, paint along path, polygon fill, smudge, etc. Then you've got your asset library that has your materials, your smart materials, smart mask, filters, and anything you may want. You even got some normals if they ever decide to load. In here you've got texture set list, which is all of the body parts or parts of your model that you're working on. They've got broken down into parts. This is useful especially if you're using ID maps. Then your layers with all the different options like fill, paint, effects, masks, etc. And then for whatever material you're using or whatever option you've got, you always have properties for it. So you can always change what it is that you're working with. Here you've got your view. So 3D and 2D breakdown is normally what you get when you open the software. The view on your, it's more like middle of your screen really. That's your 3D view, so that's your 3D model as it looks in the software that you made it. And your 2D view, next to it is your UV maps, so you can see how your UVs look for each component. Then you've got your baking, so in your baking you pick what maps you want to have with textures. So this boils down to knowing exactly what each one of these does, and there is a really good link to it that explains how they work on Substance's website. If you're happy with your mesh map bakers, then you can just bake selected textures. They will all flash as they're doing that. It is completely normal. After it's done, you just return to the painting mode. So what I want to start with is, so I'm going to start with a fill layer, and in the properties, so here, you want to have selected color and roughness only. So you're gonna untick material, normal, height. And you're gonna give it whichever color you like. So I'm gonna go with purple, perhaps. And I'm gonna up the roughness. So after we've done that, we want to duplicate that layer and we want to rename it. So the first one is paint roughness, cause it is pretty rough. So with this one, I think I want to do the opposite. So I'm gonna lower the roughness and change the color to lighter and paint gloss because it looks glossier than this one. So next I want to add a black mask. Now you notice the paint color that we picked disappears. and that's because black mask adds material. So if I draw on it with just normal brush that I've got already, it just adds on the purple detail to it. And white mask does the opposite, so it removes the material. But going back to our little fella, we've got a black mask, and in that black mask we want to add a fill layer. So what I've done is I right clicked and add fill. So when we go grayscale, this is the look that we've got by default. So I will look for a grunge texture, and you pick whichever one you like. I think I'm gonna go with this one. Now we've got semi-subtle like scratches or dirt splats or whatever it is. So I'm not fully content with what I've got, so I'm adding another fill layer, and with that layer I want to rename it because I want to add dust to it, so I'm gonna name it dust. And again, I want only color and roughness. And now you go about picking your dust. So I'm gonna go with the dust that you can definitely see. So I'm gonna go with this lovely blue. So if you're going to make actual dust, I would recommend putting roughness high, like pretty high. So the fun thing about Substance is if you decide to use this technique to make something else, you can play with settings. Because if you want, for example, like wet splash, you would make it like roughness all the way down. So now I want actually a smart mask because I don't think we've got a chance to play with it much. So I'm looking for one that looks pretty cool for the body. So I might go with sand, see what it looks like. And I drop it into that box next to the blue square. And now it added not very subtle dust. So global balance changes it. Actually, I don't like the way this mask looks, so I'm gonna go back, try a different one. Maybe I don't like it because of the color. Okay. If you go back onto your smart mask and maybe have a play around with the settings, such as grunge, to see what changing the settings adds to it or removes it. So smart masks are interesting because they work based off the curvature of your 3D model. So I feel like that would look better on a top, on a head rather than the body because it's got more curves to it. But alas, here we are, and here it is. So the smart mask is going to look, like I said, different based on how your model looks like, because it's based on the geometry. So, fun fact, if you press Alt and click on a mask, it shows you exactly what the mask is giving or taking away, because now you're viewing only the mask that you've added. And to get out of it, just go onto material. So in here you can look through all of your maps. So normals, we don't have any, so it's empty. So if you're not fully happy with what you've got, you right click on your mask and you add levels. You can crush it, but that doesn't make much of a difference because the smart mask is not adding much detail to it, so we don't need it. Just add a subtle splash or two. So if you want to use any of these alphas, you would add a fill layer. And in that fill layer, you would only leave color, roughness, and height. You would right click it and add a black mask. And on that black mask, you would add a paint layer. So whichever stencil you like, or whichever alpha you like, you drop that into the stencil, and now you've got that as a big stencil on your screen. So all you really have to do is drag it on and paint it. It doesn't let you paint outside of your stencil, which is very useful if you want to have something only in one spot. So now I'm going back to my fill layer properties, which is this first square next to the eye, and I'm changing the height and the roughness. So as always, low roughness, glossy. High roughness, matte. And with height, you can either have it look like it's coming out of your model or coming into your model. And again, base color to make it look different. So for example, if I want to paint with, So if I'm feeling, and I am, that there is something missing, and it's just me wanting to paint with normal maps, some hard surfaces. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn everything off except for your normal, because these are normal maps because they're purple. So they're really good for adding bumps and details that are not really on your model. So I want a grid. So I'm gonna drag that grid onto my normal. And at first when you paint, it's going to look rubbish because it's got that alpha on the brush. So if you get rid of it, you get a nice little grid. But because there's more that I can add to it, I will. So you right click on the layer and you add a filter. So the filter by default is not selected. And there's quite a few that you could explore and see what you can make with it. But because of the theme with this little fella that I'm going for, I'm gonna go with Matte Effects Detail Edgeware. So now if I go back to the layer, it will have some wear to it. And I can always change that in the settings. So the grid, it looks like the paint has scraped itself off because maybe he's a little robot and he's in use and he's busy doing stuff, getting into vents. I don't know. I don't know what he does for a living. And with that, you could add anything you want onto it. So if I go back to the layer and I change the normal to, I don't know, a bump. Yeah, so now he looks like he's been through quite a lot. And that's like a compilation of different things that you could use in Substance to make your model look more interesting and adding slightly more detail.